So I come with a color of like a palette of ideas to my class.
Mm-hmm.
And music is one big game with vibration. For me, that was very important to have a novelty in the work I create.
Welcome back to Unsigned Berlin. The episode is coming at you in just a second. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce the guest for this episode. He's an Ableton Certified Trainer. He's a lecturer at BIMM University in Berlin. He is brought in by Ableton to give consultancy, to just sort of give his thoughts on Ableton because he's very much a power user of the software. He also teaches in his free time. He's working on lots and lots of projects, including integrating physical movement into live sets and being able to control the music through that and all kinds of things. Really fascinating person. His name is Sjoerd van der Sanden, or as I know him, Sjoe. And the reason the interview came together is because he was a university professor at the uni that I am at. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you may know Yannick, who's behind the scenes. He's on the live editing. He was also in a couple episodes. I think he was on a Christmas special episode from a year or two ago. And Mila as well, who is the co-host for a good 50, 60 episodes of the podcast. But yeah, I was really excited to get the opportunity to speak to Sjoe outside of an educational environment and talk about all of the projects he's working on and just sort of, he's full of interesting perspectives and ideas. And I was really happy to get the opportunity to talk to him about that. And I hope you enjoy the episode. We talk about his approach to education, whether it's with groups or individuals, young people, old people, whatever it might be. We talk about his work on the project that I mentioned about integrating physical movement into live sets, his approach to music production to career, and sort of balancing your passion for music and what it counts, which is a terrible word, but quote unquote counts or for success. Counts as success, I should say, and where you can balance finding consistency in your life as well with money and everything in that, and plenty of other things. It's a fascinating interview. There will be chapters in the description as always, and you can find all of the relevant links in the description as well to check out more of what he does. Thank you very much for listening. As always, before we get started, if you do like the interview, if you can like it, that's great. If you can share and leave a review, that helps us a lot. And finally, I just want to mention Las Aguas Productions, which is the group of individuals that are making Unsigned Berlin now. We have formalized in our music studio, which is a 2-room studio. So if you're a music maker and you're looking for a more affordable space to produce music that can still produce professional quality music, please check out Las Aguas Production. That will also be linked below. Thank you and enjoy the episode. But maybe it'd be interesting to start with when you first became a full-time musician and what your goal was at that time.
When did I become? I mean, music has always been a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, started drumming and then in bands, when I was 10, 12 in bands, and I was 16 different band, when I was 19 a different band. And I think then I made the switch because it was, okay, what are you going to study? And I decided to study Art Academy in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my bachelor's and master's on a school there, 5 years, music performance and composition. And yeah, I'm not sure if I ever made a very aware decision, like I'm going to be a full-time musician. It's basically, I'm from the generation that you can do whatever you want. So I did whatever I want, and music was interesting, and I thought everything was interesting. So I needed to make a choice, and could have been psychology, economy, philosophy, whatever, architecture, and music. And I just got the best vibes whenever I was visiting there. So it was basically my path. Yeah, and then after my studies, I quickly went to Berlin, which was 15 years ago already.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make proper techno, which I did for 6 years. It was fun. I'm not sure if that counts as a musician anymore. But
No, it does. If you're if you're making it.
Yeah, not only
Yes.
that. So I think the most important thing is that I've always stayed and still am very curious about many things, and it's always coming back to music at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but a part of it is coding. Sometimes it's visual, but yeah.
Why do you think it comes back to music for you?
Because music is very abstract, very fluid, very moldable, foldable, whatever. You can, I mean, if you dive into music production and in sound design, you can use it as clay and right, and as an audio fundamentals, right? You can just being very interested in what is it, what. I mean, everything's vibrating, right? So we vibrate with another, we evoke emotions with one another, and music is one big game with vibration. So that's one of the reasons why I listen to piece and I can start crying because it's vibrating. I sense it, and I start vibrating with it as well, and then it does something to me, and I'm very very interested in this. Like, why is something beautiful, or why is this like the aesthetics of it? Like, why? Where was
Yes.
I? Yeah, music.
I don't really remember. But when you were
Yeah.
when you came to Berlin and
Oh
you
yeah.
were doing techno, was your goal at that time to be a DJ or to be a techno producer or?
Yeah, I think yeah, because I see like a lot of students of mine, they come from DJing and then they want to produce and then they produce a few tracks and then they create a live set. And I kind of went the other way around. Like
Mhm.
I wanted to make a live set, and in order to create a live set, because I was using Ableton 5 at that time in a
Right.
band sessions. I was the drummer and doing all the backing tracks for two guitar players. So with three people, what we sounded on stage as if we were at seven because we did a lot of backing things.
Cool.
So then slowly, I got more into Ableton and less in the drumming thing. So I created a live set, and I needed to create loops. And my vision at that point was basically I create different colors, like what could sound nice together, and then
Mhm.
on stage I do these things live. I compose these things live. So
Right.
um, yeah, so I did a performance with gloves at that time. I had a glove, and now I have two, but I had one glove, and I did these things live because I wanted to be like not controlling the music, but I wanted to have like a very intimate connection with the music,
Yeah.
basically. So
Was the glove your first project of that kind?
it was my master project of my studies.
Right.
Yeah, so I designed a glove. It was initially for a tap dancer because she wanted to control her music on like post effects on her
Okay.
tap dancing, but she's moving a lot, obviously, so
Yeah.
she could not go to a table because then
Yeah.
no wiggle controls. And then we had like a belt, but that was she always had to look at the belt, and she didn't want to look at things. So then very intuitively was the glove. So I built a couple of prototypes, and of course one kept with stick with me. And basically this connection of like having this intuitive connection to music. So instead of basically like an instrument, right? You're playing the
Mhm.
drums. I can close my eyes, and the drums is very close to me. I am the drum kit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to achieve this connection with electronic music as well. Like instead of me controlling a synth or looking at the screen and controlling Ableton, I am the music. So I want to
Mhm.
have like an intuitive connection as possible. And this for me was the glove was a part of it, but it's an ongoing research or an ongoing interest for me, and it changes every time. Or I make like a side track, but I never really left.
Right.
Yeah.
How does the glove work exactly? Like, is it based on physical location, or is it more of a um, like
Um,
rotation speed kind of? What are the
it's
inputs and outputs for it?
it's different. It has like an XYZ control. So I
Mm.
absolute, so in terms of the magnetic field of the Earth, but
Mhm.
also an acceleration. So I can create like point positions. Um, I can track three-dimensional movements as soon as I have because it has bend sensors on my fingers. So I have like it can get posters like one finger, two finger, a fist, a full hand,
Right.
and then based on where I do this, so I grab like a fist and I move my hand and then I release it. I have like a track, and then that's what the hardware just sends over Wi-Fi and then to OSC to my computer, and then I transform this data to musical parameters because mapping is everything and everything's data.
Mhm.
I mean, in the modular system, they don't make a difference between control value or audio. And with OpenSea, you can then, yeah, extract or expand this world to visuals.
When you were figuring out what to map different parameters to, did you kind of do research in the psychology aspect before? Was it trial and error, or how did you go into that?
Both. Like, this is freewheeling. Like, right, sometimes you start a song with a bass, sometimes with a sound, sometimes with a half a track, sometimes with a remix. So sometimes it was really, okay, I need to go to the next scene in a live set,
Right.
or I need to control a filter. And how can I make this theatrical as best? Well, by raising my hand, grabbing the thing, and then turning my head. So
Right.
very accurate, like as tuning a knob. And sometimes there was a movement, like if I put my hands like this, like if my, yeah, like making the stop movement, like doing stop this, or grabbing my fist and then grabbing a loop and then putting it to my left and then releasing it, so I record a loop and putting it in this position or that position. So sometimes it was very a bottom up, like I need to do this, and then how can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it was more free, like, okay, I have some values, I'm gonna just make some movements, and then later on extrapolate, like check what are the most important things that I changed,
Yeah.
and then connect this to the most important data. So this is if I work with dancers, for example, and I give them also some sensors, then we play some music, we dance, and then we kind of check the data and see, yeah, it's like a signature dance that you do. Do you dance a lot with your hands? Do you dance a lot with your hips, your shoulder, your head? What is the most? Where do you put your accents to it? And then yeah, we connect this to the accents of what are the accents, like what do we highlight of the sound of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So sometimes it's more trial and error,
Yeah.
like modular. See what happens if I connect this. Ah, that's an interesting sound. Yeah, but then just tapped in your movements, because I sensed if I make it very much bottom up, it becomes very gimmicky
Right.
and like a dance, and I didn't want it to look as a dance. Like it was more of, yeah, really trying to find a connection between like how, yeah, like an intuition, like how you play with an instrument. You put a lot of non-verbal or non-rational things in there. You play the piano, sometimes you bend forward while
Mm-hmm.
playing the piano, and this is not always captured as a musical parameter. So that is more the,
Interesting.
yeah, the
Yeah.
psychological research behind it. Like what else, what kind of data else can I grab from a performance?
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's when you were doing your masters and when you were performing in clubs and stuff like that. But now you're also teaching
Mm.
and working closely with Ableton.
Mm.
Remember you talking about the hallucinogenic, the light
Yeah.
therapy project that you're working on.
Yeah.
Um, how many different projects are you working on right now, like actively?
Actively,
Mm-hmm.
not so much actually.
Right.
No, no, it's very quiet. I
Well,
mean, it's, yeah.
how have you been able to balance keeping true to what you wanted to do or what you want to do in the time versus having lots of different projects that maybe could be distractions
Oh
to
yeah, that's
that?
a very good question. I think I'm very easily distractible. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're interested in so many things, it's very hard for me to say no. So as soon as something comes on my path, it's like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, let's go for it. And I'm very grateful because since years already, I sometimes have the feeling that everything that I touch changes in gold. Like I'm imagining something like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to combine this and this, and then within a month it automatically comes on my path.
Right.
So I sometimes really have the idea that I create these kind of things. Yet at the other side, it's not all these projects come to very good end. Like it's just you start at some point and then halfway, you realize that it's not going to work, or there is no money involved, or um, you separate because of differences in opinion. So it's sometimes very hard to stick true to myself or to what I want,
Mm-hmm.
right? And hence this glove project, for example, has been in cold ice for 5 years.
Right.
And then it's the question, like, is it a necessity to do I really want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just a hobby?
Yeah.
And then again, how do you make differences between what is fun, what is a hobby, what is work? So I sometimes have the feeling that these borders that I have are very, very, yeah, gray, or very, like they're very fluid,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yeah, maybe like the, um, how do you say it? Like the curse of being a freelancer, right? You're never working, you're always
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
For the glove project, I could I don't know, I could see how it is a success even though it nothing like has happened with it. Supposedly, it's like it was a exploration and experimentation,
Yeah.
and it did that.
Mm.
But are there any projects that you worked on that you feel like there would be a specific endpoint where it's like this was a success that didn't get there, that you still feel would have a place getting to that point? Does that make sense? Like should have been completed but just didn't for whatever reason,
Mm,
or feel like they should still be completed. Maybe it's better.
still should be completed. Wow. Well, I think my live act or different live acts were always nice because, yeah, you don't work on one live set. So, for example, if I go back to techno, there was like one live set, and you create an idea because you have to play, and or you want to play, you're invited to play. So you bring your live set and you do your live set for an hour, 1.5, and then afterwards you realize, yeah, some things that you planned that were possible you didn't use, and some things that you wanted to do live you couldn't do because you didn't program it. So then you
Right.
alter your live set. So that was like a ping pong thing. Like, all right, go back to my live set, readjust some things, focus on that, and then do your next live set. And I realized, okay, now I can have a deeper control about the melody, so I can change the MIDI and the density of the notes, for example, and the densities of the percussion loops. I can do that, but now I can not do this. So basically, it's a constant feedback loop of what do I think, like instrument design, what do I want to do live, what do I want it to be able to do live, and what I actually do use live. So it's always very interesting to check like how much is instrument design, how much do I need to change the instrument, or how much do I need to practice the instrument. I mean, if you want to pick up a guitar, it takes a couple of months or a year or two to get a sound of it that you think, okay, this is nice. So sometimes it's easy to say, it doesn't work. I change the instrument,
Yeah.
maybe just one string, right? Maybe that's easier. So it was a very interesting ongoing thing, and I look back to it as a successful time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. What are other successful projects? Yeah, building a studio and having that studio for a while. Not there anymore, but that was a success. So just building studio, and I mean the question is what is, how do you define successful, right? Like if an end project or an end product is there, so it's there to measure, or well, you're just busy with it. And I think that was for me a luxury because I enjoy the creative process a lot, and I'm very mesmerized by it. By okay, what would happen if I do this, and I can just dive into this world or trying things out. Like what would happen if this, or a great idea of having a chain. Like what would happen, like an audio chain, if I do this and then do some delay and then invert this, and it gets most interesting for me if I can come up with it. And my first thing is I don't know how to do that. So then it really forces me to dive into how can I do that. So I gained a lot of joy during the process. And for me, yeah, if I wanted to stay creative, I kind of was, at some point I realized that I wanted to deconnect this to like an external monetary pressure. Like I have to produce something that's measurable or has some kind of value.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about sort of defining success for your own projects.
Yeah. Yeah, so I realized that I can, well, just at the beginning, like for example, you create a loop and then you're listening to the same loop over and over again. Like you listen to the loop for 4 hours, and then sometimes your roommate comes in like, why do you listen to the same loop for 4 hours? And you're like, it's not the same loop. I changed so many things, right? A bit of that, bit of this, but you're so zoomed in. And that was basically being in the zone, right? Because you were in your studio, you were creating stuff, whatever that studio is. It can be a headphone on your bed with your laptop. I mean, just basically in the zone, interacting with stuff that with tools. And I really loved that world and that state of being. And at some point, if we go back to making techno, at some point I made it really easy for myself. So I was making live sets, I was sweating, things could go wrong, I was producing stuff, and then they asked me, can you also DJ? I'm like, I don't know, let's try it out. And well, since I'm a drummer, I knew music production was not a very big issue, so
Yeah.
I could, it worked within, I don't know, a couple of weeks. So I could play for 3 hours or 4 or 6, so I didn't need to prepare a 6 hour live set.
Yeah.
I could just play for 6 hours or 13 or 17. Um, which I did sometimes, which is mental, but it was great
Yeah.
times. But I got lazy basically, right?
Right.
Because the only thing you need to do is bring a USB stick and sometimes records and a headphone and do your thing. So I did not really need to practice because everything was in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't need to sweat because, well, if something, I don't know, it's just not so many things go wrong during a
Yeah.
DJ set, right? It's just mixing one track to the other. You don't have to think about mixing, composing, mastering, because everything has been done for you.
Yeah.
But I still like being in the zone, like figuring out how does this tool work? What can it do? Where are the limitations? What is the thing that is very hidden? Or if I combine these two techniques, what else can I do with it? Or oh, it cannot do that. I need to create it. Like entering the world of do-it-yourself with Max for
Mm-hmm.
Live or whatever, soldering, or maybe you have to code something small in Python to find a connection that is new, that is novel. And for me, that was very important to have a novelty in the work I create. And that's very hard to monetize. Like, who's going to pay me to do
Yeah.
all these small, figgity things?
Mm-hmm.
So I got the opportunity to start teaching. I mean, I come from a family that is both musical and both teachers, so I really became a product of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, starting to teach gave me like a stable income, so I had more time of doing the things that were not necessarily. I didn't have to connect them to an income, and sometimes
Right.
it was, which is great. But it gave me more freedom in the things that, yeah, getting my hobby back,
Mm-hmm.
right?
By having a job on the
Yeah,
a job on the side,
a
or
job on
having
the
a hobby on
side.
the side.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
yeah. With your teaching, was it just a job that came up, or was it something where you were actively searching for it?
No, like I said, it came on my path,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I think I was at 2011. I was in Berghain Canteen, and there was like a DJ playing with. I think it was just the bridge came up, like Ableton and Serato. So it was a connection to you can play tracks and then analyze on which key you played, and then connected to the Camelot wheel, like mixed in key. You could identify which key the music was playing, and then based on that, you could set Ableton in a certain key. But that was Ableton 7 or so,
Right.
or 8. So there was no Max for Live. No, there was Max for Live was just in there because that's what you could do. There was no scaling and tuning. What's now in there. So with Max for Live, you could basically set, okay, and I'm now in A1 or A2, like, or that's C
Mm-hmm.
minor, G minor, whatever. And you could add patterns and arpeggiators based, like mix it in with the music. So it was a hybrid thing between the music that was there, and you can mix it. You can mix arpeggiators in with the key.
Right.
So I went afterwards. I went to the DJ and said, "Hey, this is great, great. How do you make this with Max?" And he said, "You need to talk to that guy," which was, yeah. So I spoke um, to Dennis that time. Um, yeah, we were kind of nerding out about Max for Live and Ableton, and at some point he was like, "Hey, we're running a certified trainer event. You should apply."
Right.
So I applied,
Mm-hmm.
and I was selected, and that was in 2012. So I got certified with a couple of others. We were with 6 people in total, so I got Ableton certified trained. So I was like, all right, I could connect myself. Like they said, yeah, we trust you with our brand name. So I don't work for them because I'm still a freelancer, but they trusted me in having, yeah, the Ableton logo behind. Like I fulfill certain standards. And then I applied, which is at that time in 2012 at Noisy Academy.
Right.
So I've been working there for 5 years, and then whenever 4 years, which was in 2016, BIMM came in the same building.
Right.
And then I was asked, like, hey, we're now in the third year of BIMM. We need someone to teach the Max for Life classes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? Creative music programming or something?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, they changed
It's the
name.
Max for Live
Yeah,
class.
the Max for Live things. I was like, yeah,
Interactive
sure.
music applications.
Interactive
It
music
was last
application.
year.
Yeah, I think at the beginning they called computer music design, so they
Right.
changed name, but it's basically the same course, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now it's called interactive music applications.
Has the use for Max for Live changed a lot since it started? Since Max started?
Well, the funny thing is, like Ableton 1 or Ableton 0 is made with Max.
Right.
Yeah, well, Max is older than Ableton.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, before Max, it was pure data, but since it was built within the university, they could not market it because they started all over it to make like a standalone project. Hence, pure data is open source, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very much related to Max because it's the same people who created that.
Right.
So I've been using Max for 20 years already. At the same time, yeah, just maybe a year after I started Ableton, but it took me a while because then we had to send audio and MIDI back and forth with Soundflower or, I don't know, like virtual MIDI buses.
Right.
So whenever Max for Live, I was like, wow, my two favorite worlds are getting even more combined, right?
Yeah.
Which is mental. Did Max change? Yeah, I think it got more and more connected with Ableton. Like, for example, Max 9 was now released a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
You have like the Ableton things. I know I need to dive a bit deeper into it. I know they did like a huge jitter upgrade and a lot of Ableton things that you can use. Like Ableton, I'm not sure actually. Maybe like Ableton abstractions that you could try out.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm still running Max 8. I don't. Yeah.
Don't know. I'm still on Live 11, I think.
There you go. The world goes so fast. I mean, even if you upgrade every
Yeah.
day, you have the feeling you're behind. So
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, I found the update for 12. There's stuff I would love to play with on it, but it wasn't worth the money for me. And then I know lots of people in my sort of strata is not the right word. My sort of area of the level of people I'm working with that are like beginning of career that also couldn't do the upgrade for money. And then it was like I'm gonna have to change all the file types if I'm sending files between people, and it was just
the compatibility thing.
Yeah, it was just a bore for where I'm at, which is a shame. But you know, the next one will come, and then it'll be worth it. So
I also still run. I mean, I have 12 obviously, but I do have 11, 10, and 9 actively installed on my computer as well, just for compatibility with students. And I don't want to be an advocate of capitalism. So if students ask for advice and they run Ableton Live 9, I mean, great music has been created before Ableton or whatever, so you don't need anything to create beautiful stuff.
You work as a freelance consultant sometimes with Ableton, am I right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
What does that typically entail?
Well, it's just people who, some of them are DJs, and they're like, all right, I need to do a live set because they asked for a certain gig and they want to do something live, but they come from DJing and they're very successful in what they do, but they don't really produce.
Oh, I mean on the other side, as in going to Ableton's headquarters, I guess, because we're in Berlin, and they'll bring you in for advice on things. Am I right in that?
Well, sometimes it's just basically, since I'm an Ableton certified trainer, I have a certain standard that I change. But it can be Ableton, but it can also like different artists that come to me and book me and ask like, all right, I'm working on a live set, and I need to go to the next level, but I reach a certain kind of plateau. So we need, some input or some inspiration.
Where does that plateau usually come up? Is there any consistency?
Well, I think it among the students. Wow, that's a good question. If there is any consistency between plateaus, how does that work with me? I think if you realize that you're doing the same thing for a couple of months, right? Like you're playing on your instrument, or you're mixing, or you're producing, or you're creating tracks, and you realize I'm doing the same thing all the time. Yeah. So I need to break the habit to think outside of the box. And then there's a lot of techniques that you could do, right? You can use, I don't know, like wildcards from Brian Eno, for example. Like, okay, I'm going to do completely opposite things. But sometimes it's a lack of technical background, right? Because I mean, I'm obviously very interested in reading manuals, and as soon as you are in different worlds, like the Max world and some do-it-yourself, and then some audio engineering, some soldering, you do see deeper fundamental atomic connections. So this for me, I sometimes have the feeling opens up worlds, right? So not only how to use a delay, but making the delay, creating the delay,
Yeah.
gives me a fundamental understanding of what a thing could do. So I can, because I can zoom in so much, I can zoom out and have a different perspective on it, right? We talk about it as well. Like I do love to share perspectives and just share perspectives with students, and then whenever they're like, oh, I've never seen it like this, then it's like, wow, we've created something,
Yeah.
right? Or and this is how I basically could have the feeling that I sometimes elevate people of their plateau, because I open up a perspective. So because I'm never going to say do it like this because it's the way. I'm just saying, well, there's this way, you could do it like that, you can do it like this, which is very much connected to how I do the stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like if a live set, well, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that?
Yeah. How do you change your? Sorry if this is a personal question, so feel free not to answer. But how do you change your perspective when teaching at BIMM, which is young adults, versus teaching? Am I right in thinking you have a child or more?
Yeah, 2 kids. Yeah.
How do you change your perspective in teaching music to older kids or young adults versus younger children?
Well, I think my youngest student then is probably 5 years old.
Right.
And my oldest student I ever had was 87 years old.
Okay.
Which was, I don't know. Yeah, it was a woman, and she got from her husband like 2 hours Ableton session with me, and she was always wanted to use Ableton. He was 87 years old, and we took 2 years to explain the concept of that you can put like a loop on a clip. You could start the clip and stop the clip, and then have a second one and could mix them.
Yeah.
And that was for her eye-opening.
Right.
And that is for me also the beauty, right? I mean, regardless how much you zoom in inside or how much you look outside to the universe, it's infinite, right? So I don't see a huge difference between a kid or a teenager or an adult or elder people, because everybody has a level of knowledge and a level of and a pace of how they acquire knowledge and interest. So it's just basically, if the questions that arise, it's up to me as a teacher, and that's also the challenge, to find the right way, the right words to explain that concept.
Right.
And if it didn't get through, then I have to scaffold and make the question in 3 parts, and then start with part 1. And if that's still too big of a chunk, I have to scaffold again. What is
scaffolding?
Scaffolding is basically breaking the problem in smaller parts. So if I make it too big of a jump, it's like, all right, I lost my student.
Right.
I have to break it down in smaller steps until the point that I have them. So I said as well, if you can explain a concept to your grandma, then you really understand the concept. So for me as a teacher, it trains me to really dive, like, do I really understand what I say here? Hence, it's just an exercise of patience.
Right.
And as a tutor, I'm infinitely patient. As a person, I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for your classes then? If it's so guided by sort of the curiosity of the student, how do you prepare for classes?
Yeah, tell you a secret. And well, the first time it's a bit of a live set, right? You prepare colors that you want to use. So you prepare like, oh, this is a good groove. I could work with that. Oh, this is a nice thing. Oh, maybe if I do this, then this could be a nice build. Oh, this is a nice thing that I do afterwards. So I come with a color of like a palette of ideas to my class, and then I start somewhere, and then hopefully a discussion or a conversation points up, and then I love it when students start asking questions, because even better if they ask me a question and I'm like, I don't know, let's find out together. And I think that's where true learning takes place, because then we're going on a journey, and they don't learn from me that I tell them how things are, but well, basically they can witness the idea of how learning works. So it's basically didactic, right? Like I don't teach them this is how you do it, but I teach them this is how you get your own knowledge, like asking questions. I don't have all the answers, right? I mean, I'm trying to. Well, no, I'm not. It's basically understanding the question, right? That's the most important thing. So how I prepare for a lesson, I don't really.
Yeah.
Well, I have to upload things to the virtual learning environment, which I do, right? I mean, I read stuff, but I also have read stuff. So I prepare lesson material, but that is... So the first time you do a lesson, you prepare, of course. But the second time you do it, you change it a bit. But a lot of things are improvised.
Same with doing a live set, or playing with a band or whatever. It's where it's like these points we have nailed down, and then there's the connections you jump.
Yeah, so if we go back to live sets, there have been live sets that at some point I had a couple of tracks as an artist. I called myself Jozak Sander. Jozak Sander. I don't even know how you pronounce it in different languages. Created an alter ego. Been a while.
Why did you create an alter ego?
Good question. I thought that was how you brand yourself. I've seen other people that are not performing with their own name. It was a very common thing in techno.
True.
So I asked a friend of mine, like, I need a name, and he said this name. I said, okay, let's do it. So it was just born in 5 minutes, and then I just used it for 5 or 6 years. Yeah, because I think like Sjoerd van der Zanden.
Van der Zanden's
Van der Zanden, yeah.
Enough,
I think I underestimated the stage name. So I am going back to that name because that's me, and my alter ego is, well, just the problems with Facebook pages and artist pages, because I had to manage like 3 names, my name, the alter ego, and the artist page, which was only confusing. So no, don't create alter egos, just use your name.
I could never find one that I liked, so I just kept with my name.
Yeah.
And kind of went with... I was the generation that when I was young, the people that I was a fan of already had their whole history of just terrible music they had released when they were starting out online. So I'm kind of like, well, it's everyone knows. Like, everyone knows the first thing you release isn't the best thing, and that's fine. Like, people see it.
I have a similar thing right now, actually, because there is this me as an artist, but I'm also thinking of, like I just told you, like thinking for a decade already, like creating a platform that is outside of my classroom, but then it's outside of an institution. So basically me and students or people who like to follow me or think like, hey, Sjoerd's an interesting guy, says interesting things, he makes interesting music. So I want to just keep being updated.
Yeah.
And the most easiest thing is that with a newsletter. But I've been struggling for over 7 years to how to call that thing. Do I call it Life Act Masters? I have a whole site, but it's not online. Do I call it Music is Everywhere? I have the whole brand already in my head, but nobody knows because it's not online. Right. Is it my name? Is this Joseph?
Newsletter.
The Newsletter, exactly. We came up with that. Yeah. Newsletter, yeah.
But it also doesn't matter because you can change it. And it's the best thing about a newsletter is it's owned followership, so you still have contact with those people. Like if you change your Instagram name or whatever, then people are going to be confused and they're going to lose followership.
Yeah, that's what
the newsletter, it's in your inbox.
It's in your inbox.
So if you don't know what it is, you'll probably open it and you see, oh, this used to be newsletter, now it's Music is Everywhere.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I feel like newsletters are the safest place you can not worry about changing a brand.
Oh, the safest.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I read this all the time. Like, if you want to own your audience, right? Like, there's 1,000 followers that pay you €3 a month, and you're done, right? That's what you need as an artist. So I'm very, very much convinced by that, and ideally that is where I want to go, or at least that's what I'm telling myself I want to go there, because I had years the opportunity to go there, but I'm too afraid of doing that. Right. So. That's the funny thing. If you have tutorials with other students and they have like writer's blocks or performance anxiety or whatever, I really feel not only for them but with them, because I have the very same thing, right? So all these things and advices I give them, like, oh yeah, that's right. I say this 200% to myself, right? Yeah. That's why. Well, that's maybe also why I'm so authentic, probably, but. God, I need a coach as well to tell me, Sjoerd, you need to create your newsletter. Come on, man, just do it.
Pressure to go over the first step, which is
so it's so weird. Hardest. Like, I mean, I'm not afraid to go on stage to make music, but
which is way scarier, though less permanent.
It's less exactly. It's the moment. It's less permanent. Like you messed up, you're like, I don't care. But like a YouTube movie, Forever?
That being said,
Damn.
I'm pretty sure I could find old performances that I went to, but I'd really struggled to find old newsletters that I was subscribed to and thought were great.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, yes, it's more permanent because it's not like attached to the internet; it's attached to
Yeah.
the mail protocol. But yeah, don't know.
Yeah, and then the question is your audience, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm interested by 5-year-old and my 87-year-old, so it's
yeah. But I think
yeah.
if you just do sort of whatever interests you, then there's
Yeah,
also a really big dynamic of this. There
and
are
that's the
5-year-olds
thing,
that are interested in.
because I sense as well, like the my head goes places as soon as I have to monetize it. So I think like, okay,
Right.
what's the best way to brand this, and then I stop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very bad with this stuff. So then I think, okay, I just need to create like a newsletter that's not for them,
Yeah.
the same as I do not the live set for my audience. Of course I do. But the most important thing is that I enjoy while doing the live set. And then if the audience has a great experience while at it, great. 1 plus
Yeah.
1 equals 3. So maybe the newsletter is just another stage and just another output in order to get back to creativity, or not even back, but
Yeah.
they're creating an output. And if people wanna follow it, that's it.
That's 100% been my experience
Yeah.
with doing the podcast. Is it's been 2 years now. We've talked to over 120 artists in that time,
Yeah, amazing.
and we've made €80. We had a sponsorship for about 8 episodes, and then
Yeah.
it didn't work for them. It didn't really work for us. It wasn't a product that we really believed in, and we haven't figured out how to make money from it yet. But
Hmm.
we've talked to 120 different artists. I can text people and say, "Hey, come and talk to me for an hour, please." In
Yeah.
return, I can give you social media content and a little bit of a platform.
Yeah.
And it's turned out like even just learning how to have a proper conversation and communicate and really listen at a much higher level and really communicate my ideas and questions at a much higher level
Yeah.
has been really, really valuable. So just kind of doing it has helped, even though I would appreciate if anyone's interested in sponsoring us.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something thinking of trying to come up with questions and listening.
Hmm.
There was something I was going to ask about. Wasn't the newsletter? Oh yeah, it was confronting monetizing your work
Hmm.
and trying to balance that with it still being creative and not catering to an
Hmm.
audience. For teaching's been your solution. If I understood right, teaching's kind of been your solution for that, where it's like you don't need to worry about monetizing because you have this creative output. But it sounds like it's still something you worry about or you think about a lot.
Sometimes, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, definitely in the beginning of teaching, it felt like being a failed musician, right? If you're not a full-time musician, then
Right.
you're not a musician, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is bullshit.
Also,
Complete.
I feel like it's also kind of, I don't know if it's a European problem, but feels like a cultural problem of a lack of respect for education, especially music education.
Hmm.
Because it's like, oh, it's a creative thing. You can start a band in your garage. Which it's like, yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But also there's a lot of really, really important value in having an education in the arts and
Hmm.
seriously studying something.
Yeah.
But sorry, continue with your...
No,
yeah.
no, that's a valid perspective. But it sometimes hits me as well. Like, okay, now I'm building this platform. I wanted to build like getting more students, so getting more into teaching. So basically, I'm accentuating teaching with my time, but
Mhm.
every hour that I invest in teaching is an hour that I don't spend making music. So
Right.
does that make me less a musician? But then again, why should I compare that or measure that,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there was times that I just go back to the piano, just analog, no computer, no Macs, no granular stuff, no, just an analog piano and listen to intervals and chords and progressions. Making music, not for the end product because you want to upload it to Instagram or you want to put music under a film, but just for the sake of making music.
Mhm.
What a beautiful place.
Yeah.
So while I'm doing that and enjoying what I do, I consider this being a successful human being.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a successful musician, but maybe my main goal is not becoming a professional musician, but my main goal is being a professional human being, right? At least a happy human being, right?
Yeah.
And being a musician is part of that. Being a tutor is one of that.
Mm-hmm.
Doing coding projects is one of that. Sometimes I would work in wood construction. Just get out of the whole music, get outside, get rid. So music you do inside in the studio all the time. And in the summer, I don't, like in July, I don't want to sit in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be outside. And then at some point, if you can monetize that, then you can make from every hobby, you can make a bit of work.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. I feel like that's a really nice place to end it. Before we...
Oh, wow, already.
We've done 45 minutes.
Oh, mental.
Yeah, it goes very quickly.
Just getting into it. Like I said, I'm used to 2.5-hour sessions.
True. Is there anything you want to talk about before we finish up? Are there any new projects you're excited about starting? I remember you talking about like a studio in a van you were thinking about doing.
Yeah. Oh, there are so many dreams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have. At the Naturkunde Museum in Berlin, there was like a huge container with, I don't know, 4 by 2.5 meters, 3 meters high, complete isolated studio, which I picked up. I could pick it up, so it's now standing on a property on a land.
Cool.
And I just realized it's 250 wide, and the maximum allowance of width on the roads is 255. Meaning I could get a trailer, and I could just build it on the trailer, and then I have like a movable studio, which I can then, I don't know, move in the woods or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
a festival. So then again, I have to think about how I could make use of it. But I thought like it would be great to have like a mobile studio and then invite a band to in the middle of the forest and then record them, not in a studio, but having the acoustics of the forest.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe next year, because now it's too cold to build, but I don't know, maybe if I find some funding, right,
Yeah.
then I can build the trailer, and then that could be a nice spring project.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe the newsletter, if we release this after that happens.
The newsletter, yeah.
Put the
I
link
mean,
in.
I kind of use this as a jump start. I have to do it, and if it fails, then it fails. But
yeah,
if I don't do it, then I keep thinking about it. And if I do it and it fails, then I can let it go regardless.
True.
And then so I can continue.
Yeah. It's also not going to be like the first one's going to be the worst one, you know? Like it'll be an experience it'll be a learning through experience.
Yeah.
Same with this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. You're welcome back anytime. And for people who are listening, thank you for listening. We'll put all of the important links and everything in the description. And if you can share or if you can leave a review, that helps us a lot for improving the podcast, but also for growth and being able to provide more of a platform, hopefully. Thank you. And thanks to Yannick in the control room.
Yeah, cheers, Yannick.
Cool.